Hi, and welcome to the Live Healthy Now podcast. I'm so excited to be able to share with you today's guest, Dr. Kim Foster. Dr. Kim is a compassionate entrepreneur and healthcare professional who inspires people around the world to live healthy, beautiful, and vibrant lives by elevating whole person wellness. Kim worked as an MD in Canada for many years, which is the equivalent of a GP here in the UK. And after becoming frustrated by the limitations of the conventional healthcare system, she began her journey into entrepreneurship as the founder of the Wellness Coach Academy. Now, I wanted to chat with Kim today because after being in her world for the past 2 years and completing my own health and wellness coaching certification through her Wellness Coach Academy program, I know she has vast knowledge and immense understanding about healthy living. So I'm really excited to bring Kim to the podcast today to chat about why being proactive rather than reactive is key to living a great life. And as a doctor who supported many people and families through a medical career, Kim has so much to share and provide impact on about taking better care of yourself. And I'm sure you're going to be really inspired about her approach to living a balanced, healthy lifestyle. So welcome to the podcast, Kim.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, me too. I feel really grateful to have you in my world and help me as a health and wellness coach and coming onto the podcast to really share your expertise. So what I always start off with our guests is finding out a little bit about which of their healthy habits has the most impact on their life. So if you'd like to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a few. Healthy habits are such an important thing for me. So I have a few healthy habits that make a really big difference. But I think that my morning run is probably my most impactful healthy habit. And it's such an unexpected thing for me because when I was younger, I was never a runner. I did a lot of dancing, but I wasn't really very athletic or team sports or any of that kind of thing. And I always considered myself a non-runner for a long time. In fact, I always told people that I only run if I'm being chased, which I thought was just the most hilarious thing ever. Anyway, but then I decided that I needed to re-examine that because, with having young kids, running fits in, it was so hard to get to something that was organized, scheduled, structured, that I had to plan for and book out for. But running I knew would be something that could really fit into a busy schedule with kids. All I needed to do was just strap on some running shoes and just go. So it was really so much more about a mindset change, about how to even start to consider myself to be a quote unquote runner. And so we can talk about this more if it's of interest, but how I actually adopted that habit. And it took a while for it to become ingrained as a habit, but now I go for a run every morning, after my kids are off to school. And it's not a fast run. I'm not a great runner. It's not a super long run. I'm not training for a marathon or anything like that, but it's so good to start the day, no matter what the weather is, no matter what's going on in life, but just to clear my head and get outside. And it's physical and mental. And it starts my day on just the absolute best note.
Well, you do a very good job of selling running, that's for sure. Because, I've also always described myself as a non-runner, and I've dabbled in it, my backstory of working at Nike and how I wasn't into sport or PE either as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I try to run now once a week. I have signed up for a 10K. I don't like to use the word race because I definitely won't be racing in it, but a 10K in July. And I set out at the start of the year, really having not run very regularly for the past few months. And I'm trying to run once a week because I do a lot of other training. But I always hop on Instagram stories and say, I've been for a run. Well, I'm not a runner. I just go and move. Yeah. So do you wear headphones and do you listen to anything while you run? Does that help?
Oh yeah, that makes a big difference. Yeah, I wear, my headphones and listen to podcasts mostly, actually. That's what or sometimes an audiobook if there's a book. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Yeah, I listen to a lot of things. Occasionally if I don't feel like consuming like media, I just kind of want to be more, present, I guess, then I just listen to music. But yeah, I have to listen to something that makes a big difference.
Me too. Oh, that sounds great. And I have seen some of Kim's photos on our Instagram stories of where you run, and I can see why it's so nice to get out on a morning and have some lovely, views and just the fresh air as well.
Yeah,
so that's great. So I thought we could start by just exploring a bit about how it was for you when you worked as an MD, which is a family doctor, and find out a bit about that experience, what it was like, and then what led to you leaving the medical profession when you did.
Good question. Big question. So where to start? So I practiced family medicine for about 20 years before leaving fully. But the last several years of that actually were, there was a lot of frustration for me. But it did take a long time for me to actually make my actual exit. But the frustration, I decided that I wanted to be a doctor when I was 17. So, and I was all like idealistic. I'm going to help people and heal the world and make such a big difference. And in family medicine, which is what I chose to go into because I really loved the idea of helping people at all different stages of life, different seasons, and working with getting to know the different family members. So I thought that I was going to be able to have this impact on people's lives in this really like holistic kind of way. Like a specialist is, if you're a cardiologist, you're specializing in just the heart. If you're a neurologist, you're specializing in just the brain. But I loved the idea of being a family doctor and helping people with all elements of their health and well-being, which to me felt like there could be potential for actually helping people to make healthy choices and to create healthy lifestyles for themselves, for their children, like all of those kinds of things. So I had all these grand ideas. The reality of practicing medicine in this current day and age turned out that it was all sick care. I know that I am not saying anything that anybody doesn't know, right? But it's not health care, it's sick care. Like people would just come to me if they were feeling sick with something specific. I would have 10 minutes with them because there's all sorts of reasons that we don't need to get into from like political and like the healthcare system and all of that of why a family physician is only able to devote 10 or 15 minutes max to a particular patient. And all that it ended up being was just me handing out Band-Aids, putting out fires, like really just like episodic, like sort this one problem out and then off they go because I have a huge waiting room of people that need to get their little micro problem taken care of for that day. And so it felt like this is not what I signed up for. I wanted to help people with the big picture. I wanted to help people, in just so many different ways than just dealing with this one problem. But that's the way that the healthcare system is set up. And it's frustrating for me, but I could also see that it was incredibly frustrating for my patients on the other side, because they might have waited a while to get this appointment and then waited in the waiting room. And, we've all had this experience. And then maybe they actually would have loved to have talked about more than just this one issue. And many times, people would be like, okay, but then there's this other thing that I'm not really sure what this means. And I literally did not have the capacity to address all those problems. In Canada, the healthcare system, it is pay per service. You are, as a family doctor, you bill for one issue, one visit is the way that it works. And that is just the way that it's set up. That is not something that I designed, but it was the system that I was required to function in. It's very, very frustrating for me, for them. And so, I mean, that I guess is in a nutshell, all the various like frustrations that I experienced. Well, there's more, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, I think you've explained that really well. And it's very similar here in the UK. Obviously, we've got a free National Health Service, but that whole structure of 10-minute appointments, one problem, I think that had started to get stricter before the pandemic, but then definitely on the back of the pandemic, having access to a GP here is so difficult. The system's just completely swamped, and you are literally being seen. That's if you get to be seen, because a lot of practices now do online consultations, which I think for some things can actually work very well and be more effective or efficient from a process point of view. But yeah, you're just not having that opportunity to really look at what might be going on and have that holistic approach, isn't it? It's very individual, as you say. And so, did you feel as though when patients were coming in, they maybe wanted more, or was it that their level of education and knowledge was still just at kind of that more transactional, well, I've got a problem, I need this problem resolving, and that's it?
It was a bit of both, because not everybody's the same. So there are some people who, yes, have been, because this is the system that we have all been functioning in. And so, yeah, you're used to just going to see your doctor only when there's a problem. So there were certainly many people who were in that mindset. But then there were also plenty of people who I felt like they really would have wanted more help, more guidance, more support, especially if it was an issue, if we were talking about, so there's acute care issues, of course, and then there's chronic issues. Chronic issues are the most challenging to deal with, because you still don't have any additional time to deal with it. But let's say like somebody is, they're coming in about their blood pressure. They need a refill of their blood pressure pills. So I'm checking their blood pressure. I'm talking to them. Maybe in our 10-minute visit, I can actually have a chance to talk to them about have you quit smoking? Like we talked about, because that would benefit your blood pressure. Have you started exercising? Like I mentioned, because that would benefit your blood pressure, all those kinds of things, which mostly amounts to just like a tick box. That's all I have time to do. But I can ask these questions and, or I can say, what would be, if you really want to get off your blood pressure medications eventually, if you were able to lose a little weight, get some exercise in, I bet that we would see your blood pressure come down naturally, and we would be able to get you off these medications. So is that something that you would like to try? And yes, many people want to get off their medications for chronic conditions like that. All that I was able to offer them was just instruction. You should start exercising, right? And then I tell them what to do, start exercising or quit smoking or improve your diet or, something really generic and vague. And then also, this is all that we're trained to do as doctors, too. We do not receive the training to give anybody any more detailed information than just like lose weight or eat better. Like it's just really, really vague. And because we're, learning and focused on completely other things. But yeah, so I could give instructions to somebody, send them away, and they're all, maybe they're even excited. They're like, yes, I'm going to finally do that. I'm going to finally start exercising so that I can reduce my blood pressure and get off my medications. And I'm going to do it. And then they go off to their lives, their very complicated, busy lives with all of their, whatever other barriers are in existence for them, why it's going to be difficult for them to actually start exercising regularly. And then they come back in, 3 months, 6 months, something like that to see me to check their blood pressure. It's no different. I ask them if they started to exercise. No, they haven't yet. And in the medical profession, we would call this being non-compliant, right? I've told them what they should do, start exercising, and they haven't done it. So we categorize this as non-compliant. But what I came to realize is that that's being human. It's not being non-compliant. You are a human being. If you have one day, somebody, even an authority figure, says you should start exercising and you aren't able to actually make that happen, that's humanity. Like that is being a human being, because it is so hard to make those changes, like to actually implement what sounds like a really simple thing, just start exercising regularly, but to overcome the outer barriers, like your scheduling, your family responsibilities, your work schedule that doesn't allow for that, what all of those things, plus the inner barriers of like what we kind of touched on earlier, Nicola, is like that I didn't consider myself to be a runner. You didn't consider yourself to be an athlete. All of those things are going to get in the way of a person who, would like to start exercising, but doesn't really consider themselves to be an athlete, feels intimidated by the gym. Like there's a million reasons why somebody might, but who's helping them with that, right? I certainly wasn't in the clinic in those 15 minutes every 3 months. Like, how could I possibly have an impact on that? So to me, it felt increasingly, as I kept on going and I kept on trying to find different ways to achieve what I was hoping to achieve in the medical and healthcare world, it really became obvious that there was a huge gap. Like there was just this, who's helping people with this? Like who is actually taking these very reasonable, sensible ideas and helping them to actually implement? Like who's doing that? And that's when I discovered coaching. That's when I discovered the world of like health and wellness coaching. And it was just incredible. I was like, that's it. That's that missing piece that is completely absent from the healthcare system currently as it stood at that time. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much that I've been learning about recently, and I've been chatting actually to some people here in my local area who work in the medical profession, and through them and things that I've read or listened to on podcasts, hearing things like doctors only have probably about 30 minutes worth of training on sleep in the whole of their medical training is quite alarming, given that sleep is such a big part of your overall health and can impact so many different, illnesses and diseases. And then menopause is another one that most doctors, in their training have very, very little training and focus on. And even those in practices who are classed as the women's specialist have such little training on. And that's been quite alarming for me now, being on the other side and looking inward and having more knowledge and experience, to think, you do have people, as you say, who genuinely want to improve how they feel. They're probably, but some of them are at a point where life's hard for them. They're really struggling and they do want things to improve, but they just don't have that support. As you say, beyond that visit to the doctor, they've been given the advice, but then what's next? And I saw this quite a few months ago with my partner. He'd had really high blood pressure. He was on blood pressure medication. He'd had a review appointment, and then the nurse from the practice rang and literally was just like, okay, what do you eat? Do you smoke? Do you exercise? 5 minutes. And then it was like, yeah, you just need to have more fibre, more fruit and veg, not as much alcohol. It sounds like you're exercising. That's it. And then that's it. And I was saying to him how if that's somebody on the other end of a phone call who is worrying about their health for whatever that problem is they're having the discussion for, and they're hearing, these words that to them don't make sense because they're not someone like us who has the knowledge or even, they know where to begin to look for it, to build their own knowledge. I think that can put a lot of stress and anxiety on to someone as well, can't it? Because they just feel so alone. So obviously the coaching bit is one thing that we maybe can come back to. I definitely wanted to explore that a little bit more. And, the coaching, I guess, is more of the, in the sense you're talking about it anyway from your medical experience, is having that support like downstream to help when someone does have a problem, to be able to then look at making change, to have impact through the changes they make and really help to reverse or at least ease some of what they might be struggling with medically. But one of the things I really wanted to explore was like the upstream piece of it, in terms of being more proactive, because we know that there are lots of risks to health, and the health profession, I think globally, we could probably say, is being put under enormous pressure because of the rise in many illnesses and diseases. And obviously on the back of the pandemic, most, I think, health organisations are still really struggling to get back on their feet as well. So, what's your experience of that as well? And, obviously I do know some of it, having worked alongside you for a while, of, why we're doing what we're doing as health and wellness coaches, to try and help people not get to a stage of need in that blood pressure medication in the example you gave. It's like, how important is it that we try to help people to see why taking care of their health should be something they do proactively rather than reactively when their doctor has told them there's something wrong.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Well, it's incredibly important because, I mean, really, just like you said, it's just prevention is so much better than treating things once they've already happened. If we can avoid problems from arising in the first place, that's so much better than waiting until something happens and then dealing with it then. And that's I think what one of the things that I was referring to when I was talking about sick care. So we train people to just carry on going about their lives, make your choices, do whatever you do, and then if you get a problem, then come and see me. And that is how people think. Then I just sort of do my life, do my things, see if a problem arises, and then I'll go and consult the healthcare system to help me with this problem. But we really need to make a massive shift in that because there are so many things that people can do proactively so that you never have to get to that problem stage. But it's not the way that our minds are kind of already set up. It's not the language of like our predominant healthcare interactions are with a medical professional, and that's just not how it's set up, right? So, but yeah, I mean, if we can, the power of just simple but not easy, just simple, straightforward lifestyle changes like the way that you eat, how much sleep you get, whether you're exercising, and all of those kinds of things, how you're managing stress. I mean, I'm sure that, people are familiar with the concept of inflammation. Inflammation, like chronic inflammation, has really in recent years, it's become so obvious that increasingly, all the research is pointing how inflammation is at the root of so many things. And we've known this for quite some time. This is something that we in the medical profession learned about a long time ago, but it's really taken a while, I think, to percolate out into the public consciousness. But I mean, one of the big drivers of inflammation is stress. Like if you're chronically under stress, then your body has got chronic low-grade inflammation all the time. It's just a matter of time before something gives and it manifests in a particular condition or disease or, whatever that may or may not be fully reversible. But so it's so much better to get in there before you develop something that can actually make a difference. But getting that education and that word out, that's challenging because that's just not how we're set up and that's just not how we're wired currently. So, yeah.
Yeah. And is there anywhere in the world that you think they do have this approach in their culture that, they are naturally, living and then raising their kids to understand how to live healthy?
Yeah, that's a great question because you're right. Like it's kind of our culture. We're like in this, push and work and do the things and sacrifice yourself, especially moms, all of this. And then, eventually when something breaks down, then it's like, well, that was, either I'm surprised, which you shouldn't be because it was going to happen sooner or later. But this is not true for every culture. And I think that if we can, because you're right, like I think the answer perhaps could be like getting this more into the fabric of the way that we live our daily lives, because it's those daily choices. So, I mean, springing to mind, the Mediterranean, region, the more traditional Mediterranean kind of approach is so much more emphasizing on certain habits, like certain proactive lifestyle habits, particularly the diet, right? Like the way the emphasis on fruits and vegetables, that meat is more like, a garnish almost. It's not like always the focus of the diet, more emphasis on beans and whole grains and, all that kind of stuff. And it's not that they're necessarily doing it because it's healthy. It's just the way that they eat, right? And I think that is the key, is not making these lifestyle choices because it's like good for you, but because that's the way that the generations before have done it, and it's pleasurable. And I think that's the key, is that if it feels aligned and if it feels like just natural, that's the way that we live, then then we're not trying to convince people to live this way because it's just the way that people live. Or another example is, we go to France a lot. I have a house in France that we go to every summer. And the way that French people live is and shop for groceries, just this one little thing. It's not the way in North America, we, do a monster shop at Costco, stock up on all kinds of bulk food, like just huge amounts of food, fill a pantry with tons of food. But then do that every week. Like, you're gathering huge amounts of food, but the way that I observe that French people more typically shop is they're going to their local markets and they are just buying food for that day, which means they're getting it fresh. They're getting it in season. They're particular about they don't want some like big, bulk food sort of, processed packaged kind of stuff. Like, and I mean, I know I'm making huge generalizations. Yeah. Of course, not all people live like this, but this is certainly something that I've observed. So shopping locally, in season, fresh, smaller amounts that you're just going to be cooking that day and preparing that day. That's such a healthy way, a much healthier way of eating. But again, I don't believe that they're doing it because it's healthy. I think they're just doing it because that's the rhythm of the culture. The other benefit of shopping in your local community and your local markets each day is the community connection, which I think is also a really important piece for overall health and wellness too, is that we know that cultures, people, especially as we get older too, people who are able to stay connected with their community have a lot of community connections. That's a huge marker for health and longevity also. But, again, the cultures that do this naturally, they're not doing it with the we've read the research and we know that if we could all get out of our houses and connect with one another at least once a day, then we're all going to live longer. They're not doing it because of that. They're doing it because it's just the way to live. So really, these are like cultural fabric changes, but we can start to work on them.
Yeah, I agree. And I know I spoke on your podcast about my big vision, which is normalizing healthy habits. So kids grow up just knowing their value and worth and how taking care of themselves does lead to a happy life. And that's, what came through in what you shared there about the Mediterranean. And I do completely agree. I know, as you say, it's generalising, but typically in many of those countries, that is their culture. And that, the key, I guess, if you look anywhere, and not just from a cultural point of view, but even to people who live a pretty healthy lifestyle and are in good health and have good, strong well-being, they're not forcing themselves to live in a way that makes them have that result. It becomes a part of who you are. And again, back to what we said at the beginning with, you didn't think of yourself as a runner, but now you do think of yourself as a runner because you've created that habit in a way that makes it easy to do and flow in your life because you are that person. And I do talk about this a lot in my marketing and when I chat to people and share it with clients, is that I don't force myself to work out every day. It's just now a part of who I am. Was it always like that? No, absolutely not. But I've built it in a way that means it's become a true habit. It's not something I have to remember to do and put pressure on myself to do. And it's the same with many of the other things that I have that help my health. And that's the key, isn't it, is to find what is going to make the biggest difference to you and then find a way to fit that in. And what I see a lot, and I know you'll see this as well and have experienced it when you were especially working with clients as a coach, is so many people are just fixated only on one maybe small piece of the health, like the food, which can have a big effect, but it's only one piece of that puzzle. And they're just forcing it so hard and coming at it from a place of restriction and denial, and that it's going to change their life in a way that means they aren't, enjoying themselves and, they're not able to go out and socialise and, so they just come at it from such a negative place, which is why then many people fail to build habits in the way that we're talking about. I think obviously now you being on the other side of where you were as a doctor and trying to help people to approach it more in this way is, what we're seeing a huge growth in with coaches in the health and wellbeing sector in so many different types of coaches, supporting people in so many different ways. You know, when you were coaching women before you kind of pivoted again and now support more on the business strategy and business development, what were the biggest things that you saw women coming with as problems? You know, what were those big barriers that they were really struggling with?
Yeah, well, in terms of the problems that women seem to reach out for help, or they're looking for help on, it does often come down to, or it so commonly is weight. Weight is a big issue. And I think, again, those are, you know, the cultural fabric has those trickle down effects into what we as an individual care about, do, you know, make choices around, all of that kind of stuff. And this is just another example, is that our culture is so weight obsessed, that so many women just receive this message explicitly and otherwise, you know, all the time, like from the time that we're like young girls, and into adulthood. And so, of course, that's the number one thing that people are looking to solve, because it does have, it's like a tangible thing, right? Like it's something that's measurable. It's in your face all the time when you look at the mirror, or you zipping up your you know, clothes, and or getting on the scale. So it's really obvious thing that is in people's faces. So that is a very common thing that a lot of women are looking to solve, like a problem that they are looking to solve with, you know, in the health and wellness world. It always turns out, I'm going to say, that there are so many other things going on underneath, that it's so much more than just the scale. And it's so much more than just like, can you fit into your jeans? Like there's so many elements to that. And that's what I love about, you know, health and wellness coaching, of course, is because we do take that generally, and the kind of wellness coaching that I'm talking about is we take that whole person approach, because what is it about fitting into those jeans that's important? Because is it confidence, self-esteem, identity? You know, you want a particular relationship, so then that becomes like, you know, there's so many under layers that are going on, and that's the juicy stuff. That's the interesting stuff to get to. And then, of course, all the barriers of what's stopping you from adopting the changes that would help you to achieve this goal that you have set out for yourself. Because there's so many things. Time is a huge factor, and stress is a huge factor. But identity and your belief system, I think, is perhaps the biggest underlying factor that people really don't realize, because like just this example that we keep on coming back to of like the identity of like, I was a non-runner, and that, of course, if a person considers themselves to be a non-runner, why would they start running? Like, it's just, of course, that's not, so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So shifting, for me, making those changes, those proactive changes that are going to change your lifestyle it starts with identity. It starts with your mindset about whether this is possible. Is this even possible for you? So many people feel like, oh, I'm too old, I can't do this. Yeah. Or, you know, I don't have the time for this, I can't do this. Whatever it is, like all of those, the possibilities, limitation thinking that people engage in. So that's a huge factor. But I mean, there's lots of like connected threads, and it's just a fascinating thing about what influences like our decisions and our behaviors, and how can we change that? Because it's not easy to change behavior, as we talked about before. But also, to your point, Nicola, what you said a few minutes ago about that changing, like so many people try to approach that change from such a negative place, right? They're like restricting and denying and almost and judging themselves and shaming themselves, trying to shame themselves into it. Oh, I'm so fat, I'm not eating anymore, like, you know, whatever it is, right? Fill in the blank. And all of that negative stuff, it's going to be so hard to make sustainable change if and I mean, I don't think I'm telling anybody anything that they don't know, because we know that it's so hard to have sustainable change if you're coming to this negative. So I think the key is finding those positive ways, right? Because we're going to be so much more capable of making sustainable change if it's change that we feel really good about. And it's possible to feel really good about the changes that you make. And that's the key, right? Is to find the ways that what changes feel aligned, what habits can I adopt that are actually going to really make me feel amazing, not make me feel bad, not make me feel like sad or like deprived or, all of those kinds of things. So that I think is really important.
And that's the way we've got to try and like flip the coin, isn't it? Into that it's about that whole person approach, and it's about the way that it's going to make you feel. And we're up against the power and the beast that is the media, not just social media, which has, led most women to, have this belief and story in their minds that being happy and being successful comes from looking a certain way. And, certainly when I was young, like you, we didn't have social media, but we still had magazines and programs on the TV, and we had, the super wave model era and, the heroin chic look and so on. So we've grown up seeing all of those things. And for many women, really, pinning the happiness that they're trying to find for themselves in their life on having to look a certain way. And so, so many women think the answer to feeling better in themselves, to feeling more energized and, confident and worthy, and then having happiness on the back of that's going to come because they've hit a goal weight on the scales. And this week, actually, when we're recording this episode, I brought out a podcast episode on my own about the perfectionism trap for health, and that's what's holding so many people back, because they have this belief that it's all or nothing. It's like, well, yes, I have to eat healthy every day and I have to cook every meal from scratch, and that's impossible. And again, it's that starting point of a negative place, that it's hard work and it's effort and it's something you have to do or should do, rather than I want to be a person who feels good when I wake up, and I want to be a person who has energy through the day so that I can, be passionate when I go to work and still feel vibrant when I get home and have time with the kids afterwards. And so, the mindset for me does sit at the centre of my 5 pillars of wellness, because it has to start with the mindset, and there is no finish. I always, talk about the mindset just being this constantly evolving, developing part of the wellness toolkit, because you really do need to always be working on that belief system and supporting yourself with self-compassion and encouragement to help you become that person that you want to be, who does respect themselves and their mind and body, and makes choices that help them to feel the way they want to feel. And I agree. Go on. I was going to say, a lot of the clients that I've worked with, as you described, do start off with a goal to lose weight, and they always have a number in their mind straight away. It's always a rounded number of a stone or 2 stone, or, they come with that. And then, they realise quite quickly that's not what it's about. Losing weight, they know, will help them to feel better, but the weight loss itself isn't what's going to define their success and the happiness that they're looking for. And so, it's just so fascinating. But at the same time, and I've been there because I've always struggled with my weight, it's quite sad that many women are at an age in their 40s, 50s, and they're still just waiting for that day when they'll finally look the way they want to and finally feel the happiness that they want to feel. And it's just something, obviously, I'm so passionate about helping people, because I know, men can struggle with this as well, but that we do really help people, and women especially, to see why proactiveness is the key, especially when every female is going to hit those menopause years. And something I heard recently, which I really liked, the kind of way it was said, was that, you don't go through the menopause because there isn't another side. Your hormones don't come back. It's not a temporary thing that you are going through and then it finishes. That is the start of a change that has changed for the rest of your life. And so, women need to help themselves to be prepared for that and to navigate that and to accept the changes that are going to come. And that was something I kind of wanted to just touch on, was about women. And you did mention, you know, like busy moms and time being such a barrier for many people to take an action for their health. You know, this is saying of like women can have it all, and then a debate around it. And like, you know, obviously you run your own business, you've got children, you were a doctor in a very busy career. Like, is it possible for us to have it all? Like, what even is all?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that it's, I don't know. I mean, I have gone back and forth on this particular issue in my mind. Is it possible for women to have it all? I'm not sure that I believe it's possible to have it all at any particular time. I think that for women, there's seasons. We go through seasons, right? Like when we have young kids, or, you know, before we even have children, that's a totally different time. And so you might have lots of time freedom, and you have your youth and, you know, energy and all that kind of stuff, and appearance that's valued by society, all of those kinds of pieces. But you might not have any money, and your financial situation might be really, and you're kind of a hot mess figuring out your career and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then, I mean, these are all incredibly cliched situations, but it's typical, right? And then, you know, the season where you have a family, which might be something that you've wanted. So you like tick that box. Yes, I've got the family now, but I mean, I'm not sleeping. I'm so stressed. I'm wearing myself too thin. So that dial goes down, kind of thing. Now I'm mixing metaphors, boxes and dials, but anyway, you know what I mean, right? Like it's challenging to have everything all at once at any given moment in time. And I think that is absolutely okay. And, you know, because we make ourselves wrong. We shame ourselves for not being able to get our act together. And of course, social media has just been such a poison in terms of like looking at other people. Well, she looks like she's had it all. So what's wrong with me? Why can't I get my act together? So, yeah, but just embracing the season that you're in, and just and really making the most of whatever phase is happening at this time, and making changes, that like positive changes if you can, to, you know, to embrace where you are, but not making yourself feel bad or feel guilty or feel shameful that you don't, quote unquote, have it all at this exact moment, because life is a cycle, and we keep going through different seasons. Just when we think we've got it figured out in one phase of life, it changes. Then there's something else going on. So yeah, it's but women are so hard on ourselves though, right? Like we are. And I think, I mean, what you said earlier about perfectionism and that all or nothing thinking, that is such a problem. And it's not just like a problem in terms of like, oh, it makes us feel bad. You know, it creates sort of these like bad feelings. And because you're right, how sad is it to go through life just wanting something that you haven't yet achieved, like a certain weight goal or whatever, you know, that's bad. But it also, that all or nothing thinking, legitimately forms a barrier for people too, because like you mentioned, you know, the ideals, like the rail thin models, stuff like that. A lot of women have the mindset of, well, if I can't look like that, what's the point? Like, why would I even bother to, because I am never going to look like that. So therefore, why even try? And so many people, it's natural to have that. If that's your belief, I'm never going to. So therefore, why bother? Is such a pervasive thing. So really, it's so important to examine that mindset, examine that belief, because would it not be better to have like, yeah, okay, we're not going for that goal, but could you make some improvements to your own life? Does it have to be all or nothing? You know, of course. So I think those conversations, excuse me, and dialogues with yourself are so crucial to have.
Oh, absolutely. And everything you said there is stuff that I've actually been writing today for some posts to go out, because this all or nothing mentality and, you know, the belief of, well, if I can't do it all, then what's the point? And, you know, on the other side of that, what we started that little conversation we've just had with was about, can women really have it all? And, you know, what even is all in it? It's because we have this great big pressure on us, don't we, that, you know, now we have all of these fantastic opportunities that women, you know, really not that long ago didn't have. We feel like we should be doing everything, the career, the children, you know, making money, having the holidays, clothes, looking a certain way, eating out, you know, just so much comes into it, the great Instagram account or other social media platform.
Yes.
And, you know, we think, you know, we look up to these pinnacle people who we've pitched as, you know, the ultimate icons in our own minds, and want what they have because we've got this comparison attitude.
Yeah.
And I did mention in the podcast episode, I think I'd said something like comparisonitis is the evil twin of perfectionism, because that's what so many of us, and unfortunately girls especially, you know, are being exposed to. And I think you answered the question really well, and I agree with what you said about all or nothing, because I think it's your all, and it's the same with health. It has to be, what is your bundle, you know, of tools in your toolkit for your health? And yes, there are so many different things that science is proving will help our health and give us, you know, more longevity and so on. But, you know, nobody, even I guess the richest of celebrities with an army of staff, is probably doing it all from that respect.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, I'm really driven to help people see that it's your toolbox and your toolkit, and it's for where you are, as you said, in your season in life. And I had a friend who was on my podcast as well recently, and she's got a 3-year-old daughter who's been very poorly with quite a rare form of cancer for 2 years. And she talked, you know, about how when her daughter was first admitted to hospital, she just knew, because she had a bit of a breakdown, she knew that she just had to do something to help herself basically survive. And so she picked nutrition. She was like, if I can just focus on eating good quality nutritious food, forget the exercise for now, forget, you know, the socialising, and sleep was very interrupted with staying in a hospital, then that's just going to help. And she's gradually, you know, evolved where she can exercise now a couple of times a week. And that was such a well-received conversation, because, you know, it shows people like you can feel great and you can do things to help yourself feel better. As you say, something is better than nothing. And so that's, you know, what we're trying to advocate here, isn't it? That, you know, proactiveness doesn't mean having to tick every box. It's about just choosing the things that you need for what's going on in your life right now. And maybe sleep, if you've got young kids, isn't really something you can focus on, or it's going to stress you out even more. So focus instead on the things that you know right now are going to help you to feel more vibrant. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that story, that example that you gave, like yeah, there were lots of things that were out of her control. So one thing that she could focus on that would support her well-being was her nutrition. And I love that. It probably made her feel a lot more empowered during what was, I'm sure, an incredibly difficult time. So yeah, that's a great example, but it is hard because most people are like, oh, this is just a disastrous time for me. I'm not even going to worry about that. But just to focus on one, like, what is one element of your life that you could work on that it's going to make you feel good, is going to set you up for success. So I love that. If we can help empower more people with that kind of, like, maybe it's not everything, but is there's something. And because then you can build on that,
exactly.
Right? Like, you can build from there. Yeah.
And I think that's the sneaky edge to it, is that the ripple effects will be bigger, because when you do start to make a choice like that, for example, about what you eat, when you do feel better and you start to have the impact of that with maybe more energy and better sleep, and you feel, you know, oh, I'm taking care of myself, and that self-worth and self-belief comes when you start to invest in you, then you think, actually, maybe I will go for a walk, or, you know, maybe I won't watch Netflix tonight. Maybe I'll just go and read or chat to a friend. So, you know, that's the power, isn't it, of healthy habits. They do compound, and you do have that brilliant ripple effect, which is where then you get the momentum to build more new habits and take, you know, more steps to change. So maybe to wrap up, Kim, because I know you mentioned at the start about the running identity again. I think it might be nice to just loop back to that when you talked about the habits, because I know you have a lot of habits. I've seen obviously some of what you share on your social media, especially on YouTube, with the insights into your lifestyle and what you eat, and you love a Mediterranean diet, as you've alluded to. So, you know, what would you say is kind of maybe just a couple of simple tips you can give people who might want to build habits, they listen to us thinking, oh, it's easy for them, back to this whole negative attitude of it's hard for people like me who don't know what to do and I'm so busy. And, are there any simple tips that you can give to really get started on something that would build into a habit?
Yeah, that's a great idea. So, okay, well, I mean, there's lots of, I think what's really important is what we have been talking about is starting with something small, right?
Yeah.
So you don't, maybe you do ultimately want to end up with, complete, like exercising every day or, something, but what's one little thing that you can start with? I mean, some of the other habits, one thing that I've been doing for a long time, and it really does not take a lot of time, is I create the menu not menu, that sounds too formal, but I just choose what we're going to have for dinner. Like as a family, I have 2 boys, and what are we going to have for dinner each night for the week ahead, right? It's just, and it only takes me half an hour, not even half an hour. What am I talking about? It's not half an hour. It's like, it's 10 minutes of just like, okay. And I have a little chalkboard in my kitchen that everybody can see. And so then I just write down, Monday is this night, Tuesday, this night. So then it allows me to, it helps with on so many different levels actually, because it allows me to choose the right mixture of like, meat meals versus meatless meals, make sure we've got a fish in there at least once, there's like different. So I kind of create like a good, and there's often like one takeout meal or one going out for a restaurant, but then it's all intentional, right? I have decided ahead of time how that's going to go for our family for that week. And it definitely changes. I mean, it's a chalkboard. It gets erased from time to time. If something, oh, I forgot that, we've got the band concert on that night. Okay, we're going to get sandwiches that night, or something like that. But the other piece is that it really helps with the stress of like the evening stress. Oh my God, what am I going to eat? Because I've already pre-decided. So because decision fatigue is a real thing. So like it just takes away that it's just decided. And if I coordinate my grocery shopping too with like, because I know what I need to have in the house, then it's all kind of taken care of. And it just taking that 10 minutes to just pre-decide what we're going to be eating really makes a huge difference. So that's an example of just something that you could start to implement that really doesn't have to take a lot of time. But it just over time, it will become a habit and become easier to do and has a ripple effect too. Cause, like you said, that tends to happen. So yeah, that's one idea.
Yeah. And I am literally your twin when it comes to that. I've done that for years myself. I've got a little tiny little magnetic whiteboard in the kitchen that we rub out. And yeah, exactly the same. And I find what you said is the benefits from it. It removes the stress. If someone is on a budget as well, it's a really good idea because you can really try and maximise. And one of the things I do with that is try to look at what I could make in a bulk to have for lunches the next couple of days. So I try to do something on a Sunday for maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday lunches, and then something on a Wednesday that would carry over. I use the slow cooker a lot, and have casseroles and things with veg that then we can share between us Thursday, Friday lunchtime. So yeah, that's a really good little tip for people to try to use. And as you say, that isn't just helping you with what you eat and improving your diet, but it can really help with the other things like time management and stress and, making sure that you're having that variety as a family and taking time together as a family to eat, which socially is a really big plus for your well-being. Brilliant. So yeah, just to wrap up then, Kim, thank you again for your time. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure people will take a lot away. Just to let people know where they can reach out and find you if they want to find out more.
Yeah. So, I mean, the best place to go to find me or to learn more about what I'm doing in the world is my website, drkimfoster.com. And the place where I create the most content, like sort of longer form content, and that the place that I love the most right now is YouTube. So I'll give you the link for my YouTube channel too, but it's Kim Foster MD over there. And then just for hanging out and chatting and messaging and stuff, Instagram is where I also hang out, and my handle is Dr. Kim Foster over there.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks again, Kim.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, Nicola. This was really fun to chat.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah.